Hi, my name is Greg Robeson. It's great to be here today. Thanks for your time. I'm so glad you are here to join us in this 6-episode series that we are in the middle of. Today is episode number 2, which I titled Be Perfect and Say You're Sorry. One of the hardest things there is to say in the English language, right? The 2 hardest words in the English language. I'm sorry. 3 technically. Last week we started off with the 10 habits of highly effective Catholics. This whole series is focused right now on how to pass the torch. So that is a common question. How do I influence my children? How do I influence my grandchildren? How do I influence my neighbor? How do I help to pass on this treasure that I have, this intimacy with Jesus, this faith in my Lord? How do I get this from in here to these people that I love, these people that the Lord has put in my sphere of influence? So, St. Joseph Radio asked me to put together 6 episodes, and this is number 2. And last week I broke down, check out that episode if you haven't had a chance, but the top 10 habits. Today I'm going to break our talk down into 5 sections, so half the breaks. But we're going to use a great book by a Catholic counselor named Greg Robeson. I have no relation, never met him. I just admire his writing. And his book is called Parenting with Grace. And I'm going to kind of summarize some of the content from that book to parent with grace, because I think it'll do us well today. So that's one of the main resources I'm going to lean on for this talk today. So in talk 2 here, let's ask ourselves, what is perfect parenting? What's perfection? In the Second Vatican Council, it defines love as the perfection of, or holiness as the perfection of charity. So what does it mean to be holy? It means to love perfectly. That's a great definition. So what's perfect parenting? What does that mean? Say, be perfect and say you're sorry. Matthew chapter 5:48 says, be perfect as your heavenly Father is perfect. Now that sounds like an impossible standard. Come on, Lord, what are you saying here through the word? Be perfect. I think the challenge for us is to keep the bar high, be perfect, but also be forgiving. To hold up justice in one hand and mercy in the other hand. Think about that. What is God do? What is God? What does my family owe God? Everything. My family and myself as a leader in my family, the leader of my home, I want to lead my family in that awareness, and that's how I want to parent. We owe God everything. In justice, He's owed our whole self. In justice. But I fall short. If you're anything like me, that's a regular thing. I'm so far from the perfect parent. I've got 5 testimonies at home to tell you all about that. 6 if you count my wife, but she wouldn't say that. It'd just be my 5 kiddos. But she would hold me up. But right next to justice is mercy. My 5th child is named Mercy. And she's the embodiment of it. So I need to parent in a way that recognizes I screw this up all the time. I find myself parenting and coaching on the daily. And one of my kids, usually Kate, my 11-year-old, I asked her today to pray with me on my way to the studio. I said, hey, Kate, I'm going to go talk in front of people and there'll be a camera. I said, will you pray over me? She was out on the back patio doing chalk art. She said, sure. I said, Well, we're going to have to do it now. So she got out a little pillow on the back patio, knelt down. And this is what she prayed. Dear God, help Dad spread the good news with joy and not screw it up too bad. Well, that's my Kate. She says it like it is. I'll tell Kate, Kate, do your zone, do your chores, do the dishes. And often it'll be, but Dad, you didn't do. And she's right, you know. So I'm always calling my family to a perfection where I lack. And so I have to be humble about that. And there's mercy. There it is. Yes, you're right. You're right. I screwed that up. And I do all the time. But I'm not going to rationalize. I'm not going to lower the standard. Matthew 5:48 is what it is. Let's hold up our upward high calling, knowing that we're going to mess it up. So there's the message for today in a nutshell. That's where we're going. That's where this talk is going. All right, let's look at another verse. Matthew chapter 6, verse 14 and 15. This is really powerful. And let's lean on the Word and also what some great saints throughout history have said about this verse. So I'm going to use the New American version of this. If you forgive others their transgressions, your heavenly Father will forgive you. But if you do not forgive others, neither will your Father forgive your transgressions. Is that challenging for you? That's hard for me. I have the privilege of leading a couple of men's groups, and one of the guys in there, he lost a family member to murder. So recently, an inmate who had previously been on death row, who I had the privilege of visiting in prison, being involved in communion services, was actually released. So his sentence, not only was he let off death row, now he is out of prison. There were some technicalities, and I won't go into the case in detail. That was really hard for my friend because he's still in the midst of, ouch, he's still in the midst of carrying that wound from a violation of the fifth commandment. Wow. So, what is that like for you? What is that like for you? Is that hard to forgive for you? Are you quick to forgive? This is what St. Catherine of Siena says. She says that if we hold a grudge and we don't forgive, it actually blocks grace in us. So think about that. From Matthew 6, what's up with that? Does the Father not want to forgive? Does the Father not want... What do you mean? If I don't forgive, the Father won't forgive me? How could that be? St. Catherine says, it's not that the Father stops wanting to forgive His children. It's something that you change inside yourself. When we choose to hold a grudge, when we can't get past the wound, whether that's the fifth commandment or some other commandment, some other hurt, we actually close off our inside to the flow of grace that the Father wants to pour down on the world. We become an obstruction to heaven and its grace unfolding on earth. That's what happens. So Matthew chapter 6 makes sense in light of St. Catherine's words. When we withhold forgiveness from those who hurt us, we're not extending the grace of the cross. We're actually becoming a block to that in the world. We cut ourselves off from the life and the mercy and the grace of the Father. We make ourselves unapproachable. We make ourselves unforgivable. So it's not that the Father is somehow limited in his... We have cut ourselves off from what he wants to do in our life. Imagine this inmate that I mentioned who's now out of prison, wants to do ministry, wants to speak to people about healing and renewal. Imagine he wanted to try to make a difference after he's already made reparation for his sin and what he did wrong. Now maybe he wants to, he was 17 years old when he committed a crime, and so there's limitations in the state of Missouri about trying someone as an adult and so forth, right? But he feels paralyzed because of so much judgment. Yeah, he did something terrible, but people are looking at him like he's a monster, right? And he feels blocked and cut off by the lack of forgiveness. This is the power that we have with each other. Even in the smallest things. We can hold on. If you're anything like me, then you're petty, and you can remember the silliest things, the smallest things, and bring them up. Hold them against people we love, even if we don't comment on it. And that binds us. So in no way is the love of the Father somehow limited. It's just that we cut ourselves off when we carry a grudge. Some ask, well, what about situations in your family when you can't get forgiveness? Maybe you've got a sibling or a child or someone in your family who has no idea they've wronged you. Or they've wronged you and they don't care to reconcile. What about that situation? How do we become ambassadors of this perfect justice and mercy in those situations? Well, we have this great gift of forbearance. Maybe in loan terms you've heard of the term forbearance before. But forbearance in reconciliation means I've wronged you, but you're not going to say, you know, I forgive you. I've wronged you and I want to say I'm sorry, but you are just too hurt to approach me. You're paralyzed by what I've done. Forbearance sounds like this, and it's really beautiful. Forbearance says, Father, I know I've hurt this person, and they're stuck, and nothing I can say, even after praying for them, fasting, trying to speak a word to them, nothing I can say is getting through. But I don't want to be stuck here. I don't want to be stuck in this lack of forgiveness. I want to be free, Lord. I want to be free. That's forbearance. The Father can actually come into those hurt relationships and heal what other people, maybe someone passes away. My dad died when I was very young. I was 15 years old when my father died. There was no reconciliation between he and I. So anything that he had done in his life that I was hurt by could only be healed by this gift of forbearance. Father, my dad is gone now. I'm a sophomore in high school. This hurts, that hurts. Father, come into this. Make me whole. This is beautiful. This is the power of being reconciled through forbearance. So there is a way out. There is a way to be made whole when both parties don't want reconciliation. All right, there you go. This is the hard part of parenting. This is the hard part of passing the torch, is when people get hurt. When we do harmful things, hurtful things to the people that we love, or they're done to us. How do we parent perfectly? How do we parent with grace? So perfect parenting means holy parenting. That's what it means. It means parenting with grace. So that's why I picked this book to go through. I'm going to show my age here. I'm going to divide this material in kind of a fun way. Do you guys remember a 1966 Western action movie by Clint Eastwood? Anybody, any Clint Eastwood buffs today? There's a movie called The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, yes. The good, the bad, and the ugly. All right, so I thought we'd have a little fun with these 5 categories of grace-filled parenting. We want to break this open a little bit and make this concrete, pragmatic. So I thought it'd be good to show the good in each step, the bad, and then the comically ugly maybe with each one of these, okay? So the first step is in parenting with grace is to parent with faith. It's faith-based parenting. It's faith-based family life. This is how we pass the torch. Faith-based family life. So that means that I integrate what we believe. I am Roman Catholic, so I integrate everything about my beautiful faith into my family life. It's not a time clock. I don't punch it when I step into a church or get into a religious discussion. It's so integrated into who I am that it just bleeds out in everything. This is how to parent with grace. This is how to pass it on to the next generation. I liken it, a phrase that I like to use here is parenting from within versus parenting from without. Parenting from without is kind of like, we're going to do it this way. Well, because, I don't know, it's always been done this way. This is what the manual says that I read. Parenting from within, virtues are the key to imposition, to legacy faith. I'm going to parent from this place inside me where I live this faith. It's on autopilot. So virtues are the key to integration rather than imposing. I remember growing up, there was no question in my family about going to Holy Mass on Sunday. It was just there wasn't conversation. No one dared ask, why are we going? It was just imposed. This is the way it's done. All right. The good, the bad, and the ugly. Ready? Here's the good of faith-based, integrated parenting. The good. The good is to expect great things from your children. Create moments like I did. I just mentioned before I was leaving to come here to the studio. I asked my daughter, my 11, I said, "Pray over me, will you please? I need prayer." And I had no idea what was going to come out of her mouth, but I just created. Prayer is important to me. I mean it. My family's important. I believe in the power of young people's. So I just stepped out in the rain on the back patio and said, let's do this. Pray over me. And boom, it was awesome. Some other things to do in the home. A home altar, maybe a chapel. One of the gorgeous things about this studio is this chapel here, this place to be before the Lord. Family game night, family meal night, Bible stories. I don't just share Bible stories when I show up here at a talk. I do it with my family all the time. Celebrating not just birthdays, but baptism days. That's a great way to integrate our faith into our family. Who are you named for? When's that saint's day? Tell me something about yours. Like encourage a sense of ownership. Now we homeschool our kids, but this is something any parent can do. Like to encourage a sense of awareness. Hey, do you know you've got cheerleaders? This person you were named for is a historical person who's attentive to the fact that you're named for them, and you've also got guardian angels praying for you, pulling for you all the time. You ever talk to your guardian angel? Like, you just integrate it. Having a rough day, talk to your guardian angel. Celebrating baptism days. Praying with named saints. Celebrating the Lord's Day. This is a big one for integration. This is a big one for faith-based parenting. I can look at my own family and see the journey from going from my family of origin to where I'm at now with my family. And the Lord's Day is a lot closer to, I think, what the Lord intends now through His grace. Sundays used to be, when's the football game? When's the kids' practice? When's the family lunch? What are we doing for dinner? That was Sunday. And we got to get Mass in, right? Because we got to go to Mass. I really hope Father's homily is short. Oh, I hope there's not a mission speaker. Oh, that's all. So I've come a long way in my leadership. Now we travel twice the distance to go to a church where there's a sense of community in this parish. The Mass is longer. The homilies are beautiful. Everybody hangs out on the parking lot, regardless of the weather, for at least a half an hour. People bring coolers every Sunday and just hang out. This is the Lord's Day. My children are involved. My boys are involved. They're altar boys. They love it. They're learning about that. It's the Lord's Day. So we don't attend Holy Mass out of a sense of obligation. We can't imagine, like my children see in their mother and father a sense of ownership, a sense of enthusiasm, a sense in our hearts like we can't wait. It's the Lord's Day. We read the readings in advance. We'll talk about it. Oh, I wonder what Father's going to preach on. Maybe afterward we talk. Hey, what did you notice? What did you notice was there anything? How did the Holy Spirit speak to you during that Mass? It's the Lord's Day. Okay, so those are examples of integrating our faith into parenting. All right, quick story time. My daughter, Kate, the one I mentioned already, she's not a big fan of green beans. So family dinner is an important time for our family. My oldest, who's actually away on mission right now, I think she cooks green beans on purpose just to annoy the 11-year-old, okay? But so Kate has had multiple opportunities to not like green beans. So she comes up with reasons why she shouldn't eat it. Can I substitute carrots? I suddenly have to go to the bathroom. I don't feel so well. I'm not hungry, right? On and on and on. So we'll tell Kate about Saint Green Bean. Just like saints intercede for us, green beans are little helpers on the inside of your body. It's in invisible ways you get help. Oh, really? Huh. Never thought about green beans that way. Hey, Kate, do you remember the story of the multiplication of the loaves? What happened? A little bit of food became a lot. Green beans are small, but they do a lot. So just these little ways of integrating, maybe to, connecting to a Bible story, connecting, to a saint, connecting to our faith, trying to bring substance or fun. Saint Green Bean, that's silly, that's fun. But it's something different than shut up and eat your green beans. This is the way it's always been done. Where do you think I'm going to have more success? And by the way, Kate, the last 3 times had green beans, no words at all. I still don't think she likes them, but all right, so that's the good. The bad, I mentioned kind of a little bit already as far as integrating. In my family of origin, the Catholic faith was something that was kind of relegated to the Catholic school. It was drop my kids off and you make them Catholic. Teach them the faith. There wasn't a strong sense of ownership within my own family of origin. So that's something I had to recover from. That's something I had to learn on my own. All right, now the ugly. We did the good, St. Green Bean, the bad, and the ugly. So we all know that we make mistakes. We're all broken. Nobody's perfect in this effort to become perfect. We're not there yet. I, more than once, have created in my own home kind of an environment of suspicion and training my kids to catch each other in doing wrong. Dad, there's a green bean on the floor. That kind of thing. Last week I mentioned about not judging the interior of people, that was a paralytic in the growth in holiness, not to judge what's going on the inside of a person. This is particularly key with our own children. I know who's most likely to have put the green bean on the floor. I know. This is ugly. When I teach my children to suspect each other, to tattle on each other, to catch each other doing wrong, it's literally the opposite of the inspiration of expecting great things. So now instead of expecting saints, we're expecting the fall. We're all created and fallen and redeemed. And I can either train my kids to look for the fallen or to look for the redeemed. We're all created by God in His image. Fallen, we're a mess and we tend toward earthly stuff, but we're redeemed. And what culture do I create in my own family, in my own home? I was talking to a physician friend of mine recently, and it was about the attempted assassination on Donald Trump. And he considers himself to be an independent. But at some point in the conversation, he said, "Oh, that's right, you're Catholic." And so he suddenly saw that my faith, my religion, was going to inform my position about this situation, you know. But my physician friend sees the Catholic faith as a set of rules imposed on him. Imposed, as opposed to a faith that is practiced. I believe that religion, it trains us to see the world through the eyes of faith. That's a different way of seeing. But when Catholicism is reduced to merely following the law, we regress. We go backwards. But I can totally understand where my doctor friend is coming from. I can see, I get it. So I'm able to have a conversation with him, even though this is not the way the faith dwells in him. This is his worldview. You have to believe that. You're a Christian. Oh, you're Catholic. I don't want that for my kids. I want my family to see the faith as an aid to a different worldview. To see with faith. Okay, so that's the first way to parent with grace, is integrating the faith. faith-based parenting, parenting with grace. All right, step 2. The second way to parent with grace is through attachment. Attachment parenting. This means that we encourage strong emotional bonds between parents and kids. Strong emotional bonds. So here's the good, the bad, and the ugly of attachment parenting. Ready? We recently populated our koi pond with fish. And so now we have a daily chore of feeding the fish. And this is something that my 7-year-old can do. Mercy, will you please feed the fish? Sure. Can you come do it with me? Sure. Now, I've got plenty to do. And in one way, it would be nice if she would just do her thing without drawing me into it. You see, I've got so much to do. But I get the chance to do something with her. She wants to feed the fish with that. So I let go of efficiency and I go feed the fish with her. And I don't ever know when a memory is going to come that's going to be a landmark. I don't know. Growing up, I remember playing basketball with my dad in the driveway. It's a benchmark. It's a very powerful memory that I have. It's how he spent time with me. I think parents, we want to have these landmark memories. We want to create memories. And sometimes we try too hard. We want to force it instead of letting the memories happen. Let it happen. So I mentioned last week that we took our family on a pilgrimage for 4 years, and we traveled around North America, living, all 7 of us, in an RV. There's a benchmark memory that happened. You can ask anybody in our family. They remember Buffalo. We were staying at 4 Mile Creek State Park in Buffalo on the United States side of Niagara Falls. And we weren't doing anything magnanimous. We weren't even at the falls in this park. Our RV was parked in this park. We had a campfire going, and we had a bag of marshmallows and graham crackers and chocolate. And we have pictures and video from this day. And again, there wasn't anything incredibly out of the ordinary here. It wasn't anything. But everybody remembers it. My wife wasn't working. I wasn't busy on my computer. No one had any kind of obligation. No one had anywhere to be. And our lifestyle, our commitment to travel with our kids set in everybody's heart. And everybody was just like, oh, wait, we're just here. And it was magical. It was just magical. I went to gather up firewood with my kids because the fire started to go out, and I came back and I had those prickly seeds all over my sweatpants because I had been climbing through thickets trying to gather up this wood. And my kids looked at me covered in those little sticky things, and they just laughed and laughed. Dad, look at your pants. This is what they remember. We can't force those benchmark memories. We can't force strong bonds. We can't force attachment. I hear parents talk all the time about creating memories. Sometimes kids, teenagers, they'll say, oh, it's time for forced family fun time. We can't force it. We can make ourselves available and let memories happen. All right, so the bad. The bad in emotional attachment is building dependence rather than attachment. That's the mistake. That's the bad on this step, right? So attachment parenting, that's a beautiful thing, encouraging these emotional bonds, but we don't want to build dependence. Why? Because my children were made by God for God. They're not made for me. And while in some ways my kids should be able to depend on me, I should be dependable, right? I want them to depend on me, but I don't want them attached to me because I want them to attach themselves to the one who made them. And that's a hard balance, isn't it? This was particularly hard for me. So I grew up in a codependent home. And so now where I'm at is I often, my son will come to me. My son, he's 17, and he very much likes to do things he likes to accompany, and he'll ask for my help at the age of 17 on things that he can probably figure out himself. And some days that drives me crazy. And it's because of, where I'm coming from. Don't depend on me for things you can do on your own. So at the heart, I'm wanting him to be attached to God, but it's okay for a 17-year-old to come and act. Because again, just like with my 7-year-old, where it's easier, I've got an opportunity to cut the lawn together. I can grab the weed whacker, you run the lawnmower, we'll do it together. And if there's a problem, we'll solve it together. So that's been a growth for me. I've had to grow from my family of origin into a place of availability so that these memories can happen. All right, now for the ugly. Has anybody watched, we'll use some incredibly dysfunctional elements of our culture from TV. Have you seen the episodes of The Family Guy? No? Okay, well, that's good. You're probably better off. You can go on YouTube if you want, and there's a scene in Family Guy where the dad has a built-in thermometer sense, like the spidey senses, If someone touches the thermostat in the house and he's like, huh, who touched the thermostat? He just knows. So there's a really funny scene in the thermostat father sense. One of the kids adjusts the thermostat because they're hot, or whatever. And before they even get done, the dad pops the door open. Hey, what are you doing? He's controlling everything. Everything. And there's the ugly. Controlling parenting, it supplants the role of God in our children's lives. It's like forced family fun versus paying attention to the rhythm of the Holy Spirit. So if we want memories to happen, we want to let go of control, it's about tuning in to what God is doing in the present. It could be the simplest game of Sorry or Monopoly. And if we're attentive, you just never know what conversation's going to happen. You never know what random act of kindness is going to happen if we're attentive. We don't want to miss a chance to affirm that. All right, let's move on. We're going to move into the third grace-filled parenting to pass the torch. The third area of grace-filled parenting in family life is disciplining with love. Disciplining with love. Using compassionate and respectful methods to discipline instead of harsh punishment. So when things go wrong, accountability has got to be rooted in one thing. What is that? If we're going to correct or admonish, teach and admonish one another, singing songs and hymns with spiritual songs, with gratitude in your hearts to God, from St. Paul. If we're going to do that, if we're going to correct and we're going to teach and admonish one another with gratitude in our hearts to God, what does accountability have to be rooted in? It's got to be rooted in, I want you to be holy. I want you to be holy. You're made for heaven. You cut the grass too low. It's going to burn out. You've got to raise the... What are you so excited about? Is my son cutting the grass too low going to keep him from heaven? What am I doing? All right, the good. So even when my children do the dumbest things, I like to get them involved with their own consequences. This helps them to see the cause and effect of bad choices, even though most spiritual consequences are completely invisible. St. Catherine says, you know you possess perfect obedience when you possess patience. How can I expect obedience from my children when they can see that I think I'm my own God? The point to the spiritual discipline, the point to discipline is the spiritual life. It's to combat our tendency to serve our own passions. All right, the bad. The bad would be, I punish my children because they make life hard for me. It's less convenient. You cut the grass too low, the consequence is going to be I told you that if you don't wash the dishes before you put them in the dishwasher, they're going to come out. Well, what's the point of a dishwasher? So I can punish my kids for doing the task wrong. I can make a consequence. What am I really doing? Maybe my family would be better served by me getting up off my tush and going and washing the dishes, even though I've said it 1,000 times. Because then they'll see me correcting the mistake that was preventable, and they'll see me doing it with love. And that might be the benchmark. The next time we load the dishwasher, we wash off all the food before we put it in the dishwasher. I remember my dad got up and he was loving and he was kind and he washed the dishes, even though he's told me 1,000 times. I don't want to do that. I don't want to have that happen again. I think that's the beautiful way to go. Every time I have doled out punishment to my children, it's been for my own personal convenience. All right, the ugly. We're going to turn to another icon in our culture. You ready for some Homer Simpson? The ugly. The ugly and disciplining with love. Marge and Homer were trying to get Bart to come out of his crib. I don't know how old he is at this point in this show. But Bart he's too old. He's maybe 3. He's too old for the crib. And he's holding on. You can find this on YouTube too. He's holding on to the crib. It's called Homer's Reverse Psychology. Bart's holding on to the crib. And they're pulling him away from the crib. You're done with the crib. And the child does not want to let go. And Homer says, I know what to do. Let's go, Marge. Let's leave the baby with his little crib. And then they both kind of walk out the room and Bart doesn't leave the crib, and then Homer, no, and he runs back in. He tries to pull him again. So if we don't get whole as parents ourselves, if we don't address whatever might be broken in us from our own family, we're very likely to pass that on to our kids. We'll pass on a family wound and degrade our own kids from a hurt place. Authoritarian parenting just means I'm hurt. I'm insecure. That's what that means. All right. Let's move on to number 4, grace-filled parenting in passing the torch. Building a grace-filled family. The 4th way to do that is family rituals and prayer. Family rituals and prayer. To create a family life centered around prayer, sacraments, and religious traditions. Let me give you some good examples. Here's the good. Every night, I bless my kids with holy water, We grab holy water from the church, and my kids know that the paternal blessing is coming at night prayer, and I mark them with the sign of the cross before bed. Every day we will commonly stop. We'll let our watches or our phones interrupt our day, sometimes at 12 to pray a prayer called the Angelus. Sometimes at 3 o'clock we'll pray for something really important, an end to abortion. Because 3 o'clock is the hour that our Lord died. And so we let our family life be interrupted by a ritual of prayer. Hey, it's 3 o'clock, let's say a prayer together. Everybody knows. Another way that we bring ritual, a sense of ritual and prayer into our family life is we keep gifts for the homeless in our car, and we'll pray with them. We'll if I can, I'll pull the car over and pray. And my kids have participated in this before. We'll stop and give away water or whatever we think we've got, or maybe a gift card, and we'll find out the person's name at the stop and pray with them. This is a way that our family prays. It's integrated into our family. It's like a ritual. Everybody knows. My kids will sometimes, I'll say, hey, it's your turn. One of my kids will roll down the window in the back seat. Hey, what's your name? How'd you end up on the street? Oh, okay, cool. Hey, my name's Eli. Can I say a prayer with you? Okay, Eli's 15. All right, so and boom, right there on the spot. My 15-year-old my teenager's praying with the homeless. It's just part of our identity. It's integrated into. We keep the gifts ready. All right, what else? We have lost some children to miscarriage. We have lost some family members. My brother has gone before, both my parents, and they all happen to be buried at the same cemetery. So we will go to the cemetery and pray. It's just another ritual. And we'll pray for the dead. And we'll pray with the members of our family who we still feel very connected to. It's another powerful family ritual centered in prayer. So if I live the faith deeply, then when I speak or lead ritual, it's not empty or trite. When I'm trying to pass the faith on, I'm coming from a place where even my teenagers can see it's integrated in me. It's not a rule book I'm following. It's something that my faith is alive in me. And so when I speak to it, they can see that I'm speaking from a place of authenticity, and it's got forth. Young people are so good, after 15 years of youth ministry, I can tell you, young people are so good at spotting a fake. Someone who's saying one thing and doing another. Okay, the bad. That was the good. The bad. When I grew up, the thing that ran my calendar and my day was sports. So I was a scholar athlete. I spent a lot of time, big shocker, playing basketball. All right? And I mentioned playing with my dad, and that was one of the ways we had. And I'm not saying that being committed to a sport, if you got a kid, a grandkid, someone who can get a full ride, I think that's great. That's an incredible blessing. But we've got to learn to play our sports and things that are extracurricular as if they're extracurricular. The way we reward athletes and musicians today sends a message to our children about the value of the human person and fame and power and money that's not true. It's a betrayal of who we are as God's children. Well, I got caught up into that. So I was a full ride college athlete, and then I got caught up in thinking, am I going to be a professional athlete? Is this going to be my life? And I lost myself. I had to recover from that. So if you've got kids that are playing sports, let's set some realistic expectations. Or a musician, if somebody wants to sees themselves on stage someday. Dreams are great, but let's never forget who we are as God's child. If we're going to be an athlete, we've got to be a prayerful athlete. Let's show them some examples of professional athletes who've used the world stage to speak to their faith. But that's what ran my calendar and ran my life, was hunting for that scholarship, hunting for that identity. And the ugly. The ugly is the difference between we have to go to Mass today and we get to go to Mass today. Oh, wait, we have to pray before we eat. I want to pray because I'm grateful for this food. I can't tell you how many parents have come to me because their kids have left the faith, even though the home life was filled with rigor, was filled with rules and discipline centered around the faith. Disingenuous rigor and discipline that's not rooted in the parents is a powerful, repulsing force. So the best thing we can do, the most important thing we can do to pass on the faith is to be holy ourselves. How can we pass on a faith that's not alive in here? In here. How can we do that? All right, number 5, the last one is communication. To build a grace-filled family, grace-filled parenting means fostering open and honest communication within the family. How do we balance openness with discretion and a need for privacy amongst a family with the range of personality types? And we've got them all. I like to call family dinner our TMI dinner sometimes. It's too bad my wife's not here to share that. So I'm pretty far down the extroverted side, and my wife's pretty far down the introverted side. So dinner time sometimes sounds like burping the alphabet. Dad, I had the zit and I was in the bathroom, and you're not going to believe I popped it on the... It's dinner hour. We don't need... Children retain the faith in relation to the warmness with which it's lived in the home. Children retain the faith in relation to the warmth that they can sense in their parents. All right, so the good in communication. How do we foster this? My kids will tell me when I'm doing it wrong. I don't know, does that ever happen to you? So fostering this kind of communications, it means saying, you're right. My kids, in their own way, will say, Dad, that hurt. My Mercy, this little 7-year-old, this little redhead, she is the most sensitive soul. And if I say the right thing in the wrong, intense voice, she is crushed. And she'll tell me through tears, Dad, the way you said that really hurt. And I know exactly what she means. And you know what I'll say? I bounce back pretty fast. I say, you're right. Dad's not perfect. Will you forgive me? I'm so sorry. And sometimes I say that with tears in my eyes because that's what I'm feeling. Really sorry for not practicing more self-control. Sometimes I have to confess that, hey, Lord, I just crushed a 7-year-old. What one you trust me with. So the good is taking feedback. Create a culture of openness by showing your children that you're still learning. Yeah, I'm not perfect. Have you ever had your kids ask you a question, grandkids ask you a question, and you say, I don't know? Or do you make it up on the fly? Which one do you... A great thing to say is, I don't know. That's a great question. I'm going to find out, and I can't wait to learn about that. And if you find out first, let me know. But next time I see you, I'm going to have an answer for you. Creating that culture of openness. All right, here's a good game or a story, a good game to play with the family. It's called the truth-telling hat or the truth-telling conch. We've played it a couple different ways. It could even be something as simple as the water bottle. A hat's easy because, you know, if you have any hat wearers in your family. So it could be night prayer. It could be dinner time, family dinner time. This is the fun way to foster open communication in the family. We'll use the water bottle because I have it right here. I'm holding the water bottle, and as long as I'm holding the water bottle, you have to tell the truth. Eli, did you eat all the cookies? And he has to answer honestly. Everybody has to play by the game. Then I pass the water bottle. And my wife might say, Kate, did you really lose your science project? Or did you finish your homework today? And we pass it to one of the kids, and one of my kids will say something like, when you were my age, did you ever play a prank on one of your teachers? And my kids have heard that story. Yes, I did. I got caught. It was Latin class, and there was a map in the front of the classroom, and I told my kids, love this story. And I tried to rig the map so that when the teacher came in, as he did every day, to pull it down to begin the lesson, it would fall down on him. Well, he walked in, this priest walked in the middle of me trying to fix it. And he made me carry that map throughout the entire school and during lunch to walk and explain. Everybody that stopped and asked me, I had to explain that I was a fool trying to trick my teacher. And he made me walk into every single classroom, math and history, and explain to the class why I'm carrying this giant map. So my kids love that story. And then they'll pass the water bottle again. The truth-telling water bottle. My wife might say, name one thing you love about your family. And then everybody has to answer. Kind of an affirmation thing. Well, this is a simple little game. This is a simple way to, kind of play a game and have fun and engender and encourage open and honest communication. And laugh a little bit too, All right, that's the good. The bad. What's the bad in open communication? The bad is, I mentioned to you the ugly. The ugly would be the TMI dinner. The bad might be demanding transparency that hasn't been earned. Our children don't care what we know until they know that we care. They don't trust us until they know the boundaries and they feel safe, right? So, hey, you got home after the time I asked you to be home. Who were you with? What happened? Not just why were you late? Maybe pressing, demanding questions. What'd you do before that? So transparency is good, but it's something we've got to build. We've got to build that trust through healthy boundaries and have realistic expectations. So sharing too much is just as much of a problem as sharing too little. So regardless of the communication problem we encounter in the family, humility is what allows us to hold our upward high calling. That's what we began with today. It's parenting with grace. I've shown you 5 different ways we can build a family with grace. Say, Lord, I can't do this. This job is bigger than me. I know I'm going to screw this up. And I'm going to need your grace. I'm going to need your life living in me to pull this off. And there's the hallmark virtue. It's the virtue of humility. That's what allows us to hold up Matthew 5:48 without rewriting the gospel. This allows us to aim for perfection with the ever important tool in our belt of saying, I'm sorry. All right, that's what I've got for today. We're ready for some Q&A, I guess.
You're giving us your life and how fortunate you are to have that foundation. That is so unique. What I see with all of this material is to be able to hopefully pass on to young families, because that's who needs this information. Mm-hmm. But where we are today, men, now, besides prayer, because I agree, the only thing we can do is to pray that a conversion can take place. But for men, anything that's too spiritual, they back off.
Yeah.
How do you develop a relationship in a godly way, starting with your spouse and bringing it down to your older children? I mean, it's like it's useless. We think that it's useless. We don't think that we have that opportunity because society has dictated otherwise. Does that make sense?
It does. So rephrase your question. You mentioned about men. So let me hear you ask that again.
The men, I think if you could get them to be the leaders in the family, the spiritual leader, that's our ideal situation. How do we accomplish that?
How do we go after the men?
Yeah.
In a room right now with very few men?
Exactly. It's a challenge.
Yeah.
I think we're going to have much better luck with getting this in the hands of young mothers, because I think that's when we're sure we're going to have perfect children.
Yeah.
And so they're receptive.
Yes.
But how do you make the husband receptive?
Right. Well, I think you have to meet men where they're at so that they don't feel threatened. They don't feel like you're out for them. You're criticizing them. You're right. And so, how do you meet them where they're at? So right now, I get the privilege of leading 2 men's groups in 2 different parishes. Right, just kind of happened organically. And then one of them spun off, and now it's got its own momentum. And what we're doing is getting men together on their term. It's just men, first of all, and then we're picking, getting them involved in choosing the topics and kind of directing. But we've got holy leaders that are running it, and so we're bringing them good material, but on their turf, in their playground, I guess you would say, is a way to put it. So I've got a leadership group that I lead on Saturday mornings, and I've been leading these men now. A priest friend of mine and I started it 9 years ago, and it just kind of took on its own momentum. And I am committed to accompanying these guys, just being there. I'm there every Saturday morning at 6:30, and I take them through different spiritual works. And some of them, like you're hearing a lot of Catherine of Siena, because we're working through the dialogues right now. She's hard to read. She's difficult. And so this is something I do. This is what I'm capable of doing, right? But everybody can find a way to, so if you're a man and you're listening to this, you can find a way to engage other men, because the men are needed for the fight. So the first step, do you realize you're in a battle? Second step, you're not going to win this alone. So the third step is, how can you get more people engaged with the skill set that you've got? Not everybody's a public speaker, a theologian, a small group leader, or it feels like they're very religious. But those aren't the qualifications that Jesus used to choose 12. So why would we use those? Where are those coming from? Do you see the battle? Do you want to fight? Do you want to win? Do you want to go to heaven? Do you have skills that can be used to rally people together? And so we've got to get guys asking that question, what could I do? So I think a lot of times it starts with being invited, a guy being invited to a group like this, and then they begin to see themselves as potential spiritual leaders. They're people who are gifted and talented that can make a difference. So So it takes, we have to, men, first of all, have to step in where we can and recruit and train. We've got to step in and create enthusiasm and empower the men in our lives to see themselves differently. As you know, you're not the first person to ask this question, how do we get the men?
Sure.
You know this and sometimes the question's more important than the answer. We've got to keep asking that. How do we got to get more people asking that.
We are getting men groups together. I know there are some out here in St. Charles, and they have quite a few men gathering. You know,
that's great.
And they're young men.
Yeah.
They're wanting more.
Mm-hmm.
It's the leadership that they don't have.
Right. Yeah.
What you have, that uniqueness. So.
Yeah. Sure.
Wow, it's a challenge.
I have a question.
Yes.
It's on my heart, and I wrote it down so I wouldn't forget because I get engrossed and excited by your talk.
No, good.
It just hit me full throttle. What is the best way as a mother and a Gigi's a grandma, and,
Love it.
and you watch your line, and I wish I could change the voice so that my daughters would never recognize it, but there's one particular one that just breaks my heart. She's career, go, and I understand that she has her own business, but the moment they enter their home, they have those doggone cell phones.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to nab them away from both of them, the father and mother, because I see the two littles.
Yeah.
And now they entered their home. In my world, you're on family time now.
Yeah. Right.
That stuff stays out there.
Right. Yeah. You know, we have to create rituals that, and a sense of awareness around this issue. I think people highly underestimate the effect of screens in the digital era that we live in. They're underestimating it. And unless people have been educated on what screens do in the brain and how that affects self-awareness and also family identity, unless they've heard that information or not aware that there's a problem. But one way to make people aware is invite them to the good. Rather than say, you're foolish, you have your screen all the time, this is a problem, because we're not a biochemist, we're not a brain surgeon, right? So how do you get people to, okay, so that's criticizing, that's trying to call people to change their criticism. What's a way? I just got a text, just within the last 72 hours, a buddy of mine since college invited me to come over to play cards. And so we played many, many, many hours, right, of cards together, just a group of men. And you know what his text message says? He said, come over this night for cell phone free card game.
Cool, I love that.
Simple.
I'm going to borrow that for everything. Because
cell phone free.
Associates and acquaintances,
Yeah.
It's attached to their, this world is.
Yeah. Now he knows I own my own company. He knows I'm married. And he knows all this already, right? And so what if my wife called? Well, I would answer. Am I going to tell my wife it's cell phone free card game? Probably not. But I understand the expectation. He's inviting me into his home. He wants presence.
Exactly.
He wants to have fun, but he wants a person. He wants to be in relationship with a person. And I'm going to honor that. So that's a simple way so we can start creating positivity around the awareness, you know?
We established it when they were all single.
Yeah.
Whether they returned home,
Yeah.
came out,
Right.
some party at our house, whatever, they knew to give me the phones.
Yeah.
Now they're adults with their own children, and it's like I can't cross that line.
Yeah.
Boundaries, and I don't know how to broach it.
Yeah.
I'm still praying about it.
Yeah. That's hard. There's no clear, I mean, you try to create positive momentum in the direction of what's good for us. Maybe it's Thanksgiving dinner. Maybe you just start with the things that you host, you know. It's going to be Thanksgiving dinner at my house, but cell phone, you put a little basket by the front door. Any other thoughts, questions?
No, we just have work to do, don't we?
Yeah, we do. Well, next week we'll be, we're going to move on. Next Saturday's good, though.